On the 26th of May, 1828, Whit Monday, a boy walked into the city of Nuremberg. He was about 16 years old. He wore peasant clothes that were falling apart. He could barely stand. He spoke a few words, but they made no sense. When they asked him who he was, he said 2 words, Kaspar Hauser. When they asked him where he came from, he said nothing, because he didn't know. He had no memory of a mother, no memory of a father, no memory of sunlight or wind or the faces of other people. And yet, his arrival would shake the thrones of Europe. I'm the Beard, and tonight, I'm telling you the story of the boy who came from nowhere. In 1828, a boy appeared on the streets of Nuremberg with a letter in his hand. He could not read. He could not write, except his own name. He had never seen a staircase. He thought a mirror was a window into another room. He had spent his entire life, 16 years, alone in a cell. And the moment he stepped into the world, everything changed. He became a celebrity, a scientific curiosity, a pawn in a royal game. Some said he was a fraud. Some said he was a prince. Some said he was the rightful heir to the throne of Baden, hidden away to protect a dynasty's secret. And when he died, stabbed in a public garden at the age of 21, the questions only grew louder. 196 years later, we finally have some answers. But not all of them. Nuremberg, 1828. A city of 50,000 souls. Half-timbered houses leaning over cobblestone streets. A medieval castle watching from the hill. It was the kind of city where everyone knew everyone. So when a stranger appeared, ragged, stumbling, barely able to walk, people noticed. His name was never recorded, but a shoemaker named Weichmann was the first to approach him. The boy stood in the middle of Unsolved Platz, clutching a letter addressed to a cavalry captain. His feet were blistered. His clothes were torn. He looked like he had walked through hell to get there. Weichmann took him to Captain von Wesnick's house. The captain wasn't home, so the boy sat on the doorstep and waited. And waited. When von Wesnick finally arrived, he opened the letter. It was written in a formal German hand. It said the boy had been left with the author as an infant, on October 7, 1812. That he had been kept in complete isolation, never allowed outside, never allowed to see another human face. That he had been taught to read and write, but barely. The letter said the boy's name was Kaspar. His father had been a cavalryman. He wanted to be a soldier, like his father. And then, in the most chilling line of all, the letter instructed the captain, either take him in or hang him. Von Wesnick didn't know what to do. He brought the boy inside. He offered him food. The boy refused everything except bread and water. He looked at a mirror in the hallway and tried to walk behind it, because he thought he saw another room. He had never seen a mirror before. The police were called. A magistrate named Farbach, Anselm von Farbach, took the case. He was one of the most respected legal minds in Germany, the author of the Bavarian Criminal Code, a man who had dedicated his life to justice. And what he heard from Kaspar would haunt him for the rest of his life. Farbach sat across from the boy for hours. He asked questions, gently at first, then more probing. Kaspar answered in a halting, childlike voice. He had no concept of time. He didn't know what a year was. He didn't know what a month was. He knew only, I woke up. I ate. I slept. I woke up again. The repetition of those words, I woke up. I ate. I slept, sent a chill through everyone in the room. This was not the testimony of a fraud. This was the testimony of someone who had been treated like an animal. Kaspar spoke slowly, haltingly. He told Farbach that he had lived his entire life in a small room, about 2 meters long, 1.5 meters wide, 1.5 meters high. A hole in the wall. No window. He slept on straw. He woke to find bread and water left for him. He had never heard another human voice. Never seen another face. Not once. The man who brought his food never spoke. Never showed himself. Kaspar would wake, eat, sleep. For 16 years. When he was finally released, for reasons no one understood, a stranger taught him to walk, to say a few sentences, and to write his name. Then the stranger led him to the gates of Nuremberg and left him. Farbach was skeptical. He had seen frauds before. But the more he examined Kaspar, the more convinced he became that the boy was telling the truth. Kaspar couldn't distinguish between objects by sight. He had to touch them. He had no concept of distance. He called everything horse or baby because those were the only words he knew for living things. He thought the stars were holes in the sky. He had the body of a 16-year-old, but the mind of a toddler. Farbach wrote a book about the case. It became a sensation across Europe. People flocked to Nuremberg to see the wild boy. He was put on display. He was poked and prodded by scientists and aristocrats and curious crowds. But Farbach had another theory, a darker one. He believed Kaspar was not a random orphan. He believed the boy was royalty, the heir to the throne of Baden, stolen as an infant and hidden away to clear the path for another claimant. If Farbach was right, if Kaspar Hauser really was the rightful Grand Duke of Baden, then the royal house that ruled over one of Germany's most powerful states was built on a crime. And someone wanted to make sure the secret stayed buried. The Lost Prince theory. It sounds like something from a fairy tale, doesn't it? But let me tell you, in 1828, it was more than a rumor. It was a political bombshell. Because if Kaspar was the real prince, then the Grand Duke of Baden was a usurper. And the entire house of Baden was built on a lie. That kind of secret is worth killing for. After his appearance, Kaspar was taken under the protection of the city of Nuremberg. He was placed in the care of a prison warden named Hiltel, given a room in the tower of the Westner Gate. The city paid for his food, his clothing, his education, and the world watched. He became the most famous person in Europe. Letters arrived from all over the continent. Scientists came to study him. Philanthropists offered money. Royalty sent gifts. Lord Stanhope, an English aristocrat, took a special interest. But the attention wasn't all kind. Some called him a fraud. Some said he was a half-wit. Some said he was a circus act. Kaspar learned quickly. Within months, he could speak German fluently. He learned to write. He developed a remarkable memory and a sharp, curious mind. He drew detailed pictures. He played the piano. His drawings are preserved to this day. They show a strange combination of naivety and precision. The work of a mind that had spent 16 years cataloging nothing, and now could not stop cataloging everything. He wrote an autobiography. It sold thousands of copies. On October 17, 1829, a year and a half after his arrival, someone tried to kill him. Kaspar was sitting in his room in the Westner Tower when a man with a covered face burst in. The man swung a knife at Kaspar's head. Kaspar raised his arm to block the blow. The blade cut deep into his forehead. The attacker fled. Kaspar survived. But the message was clear. Someone wanted him dead. The question was who? Suspicion fell on everyone. The servants of the Baden court, political agents, even members of Kaspar's own household. But no one was ever caught. No one was ever identified. Farbach was convinced it was an assassination attempt, ordered by the House of Baden to eliminate the rightful heir. After the attack, a new guardian was appointed, Baron von Tucher, and Kaspar's life became a prison all over again, this time with nicer walls. He was kept under constant watch. His movements were restricted. Visitors were limited. The city of Nuremberg had decided that the boy who came from nowhere was now a liability. But Kaspar had other ideas. Enter Lord Stanhope. Philip Henry Stanhope, the 4th Earl Stanhope, an English aristocrat who had taken an almost obsessive interest in Kaspar Hauser. Stanhope arrived in Nuremberg in 1830. He was wealthy, connected, and charming. He showered Kaspar with gifts, books, clothes, a piano. He paid for his education. He promised to take him to England, to give him a new life, a proper future. Kaspar, who had never known kindness from anyone, trusted him completely. But Stanhope was not what he seemed. He was a man with debts, a man with political ambitions. And he had made a visit to the court of Baden, the very royal family that Kaspar was rumored to be the secret heir of. Kaspar trusted him completely. But Stanhope had ulterior motives. He spent months with Kaspar, writing detailed observations, gathering information. He took Kaspar to the court of Ansbach, 100 miles away, and installed him with a new guardian, a man named Dr. Johann Georg August Meyer. And then Stanhope left. He went back to England and never returned. Later, Stanhope published a book about Kaspar, in which he declared the boy a fraud. He wrote that Kaspar had invented everything, that he was a con artist, that the Lost Prince theory was nonsense. Why would a man who had spent years championing Kaspar suddenly turn on him? The answer may lie in politics. Stanhope was connected to the House of Baden. His sudden change of heart came after a visit to the Baden court. It looked very much like Stanhope had been paid to destroy Kaspar's credibility. Kaspar had two problems. One, he didn't know who he was. Two, everyone else had their own idea of who he should be. The scientists wanted a specimen. The nobility wanted a fraud or a prince, whichever suited their politics. The public wanted a spectacle. And the only person who might have known the truth was a man from the House of Baden who never spoke a word. At Ansbach, Kaspar was placed under the care of Dr. Johann Georg August Meyer, a strict, cold man who believed the boy was a fraud from day one. Meyer treated Kaspar like a prisoner. He was forbidden from speaking to anyone outside the house. His mail was read. His movements were watched. He was humiliated in public. And yet, Kaspar fought back. He refused to confess to fraud. He continued to insist that he had been imprisoned for 16 years. He wrote letters, desperate, pleading letters, asking for help. No one came. In late 1832, Kaspar made a discovery. He found out that his letters to Feuerbach, his only ally, had been intercepted by Meyer and destroyed. Feuerbach had died the same year, under mysterious circumstances. Some said it was a stroke. Some said he was poisoned. The man who had championed Kaspar, who had written the book that made him famous, who had believed he was a prince, was gone. Now Kaspar was alone with his enemies. On the afternoon of December 14, 1833, 3 days after his 21st birthday, Kaspar Hauser was found bleeding in the public garden of Ansbach. He had been stabbed in the left side of his chest. The wound was deep. He managed to drag himself back to the house, clutching his side, leaving a trail of blood on the ice. When Dr. Meyer asked what happened, Kaspar said, "I went to the park. A man came. He gave me a purse, and then he stabbed me." He described the attacker as a tall man with a dark beard, wearing a dark coat, who had spoken with a strange accent. Kaspar said the man had asked him, "Do you know what you have done? The king wants to see you. I hear you are a good shot." And then the knife went in. For 3 days, Kaspar lay in bed, fading in and out of consciousness. His wound was infected. He developed a high fever. On December 17, 1833, he died. His last words were, "I did not come here to deceive anyone. I wanted to tell the truth." His body was autopsied. The doctors noted that his liver and spleen were abnormally small, consistent with a lifetime of malnutrition. His skull had a high, vaulted shape. His brain showed signs of incomplete development. The boy who had appeared from nowhere was gone. The investigation into Kaspar's murder went nowhere. The man with the dark beard was never found. No weapon was ever recovered. No witnesses came forward. But there was a trail. Kaspar had told Meyer that the attacker gave him a purse before stabbing him. The purse contained a note. The note was written in mirror image writing, the kind that needs a mirror to read. It was in Latin. Kaspar Hauser is the legitimate Prince of Baden. The king's agents will reveal his true origin. Keep this note as proof. The note was dismissed as a forgery, perhaps written by Kaspar himself to attract sympathy. But the handwriting was never matched to anyone. And then, years later, a letter emerged from the archives of the House of Baden. It had been written in 1829 in the margins of a confidential police report. It read, "The boy must be removed." The question that haunted Europe for 200 years, was Kaspar Hauser a prince? Or was he a lost boy who stumbled into a story too big for him? In 2024, science finally gave us one answer. But it also took something away. For more than 150 years, the lost prince theory could neither be proven nor disproven. The House of Baden refused to open its archives. The graves of the royal family were sealed. The truth was buried with the dead. But in the 1990s, a new kind of detective appeared, the geneticist. Samples of Kaspar Hauser's blood, preserved on his clothing in the Ansbach Museum, were tested. In 1996, mitochondrial DNA analysis showed that Kaspar was not a match for the Baden lineage. The lost prince theory was dead, or so it seemed. But in 2002, a second study using hair samples claimed the opposite. It said Kaspar was a match for the House of Baden. For 20 years, the two studies contradicted each other. The mystery of Kaspar Hauser remained unresolved. Then, in 2024, a team of scientists from Innsbruck Medical University and the European Academy of Bozen used a brand new method. They had developed it for analyzing Neanderthal DNA, fragmentary, damaged, ancient. And they found the truth. The new study was definitive. Kaspar Hauser's mitochondrial DNA matched Western European ancestry, but it did not match the House of Baden. Not even close. The 2002 study had been wrong. Contaminated samples. Outdated technology. The 1996 study had been right all along. Kaspar Hauser was not a prince. He was not the heir to a throne. He was not a kidnapped infant stolen to clear a royal succession. He was, most likely, an ordinary boy from an ordinary family. Abused, neglected, imprisoned, for reasons we will never know. The fairy tale is over. The lost prince is lost no more, because he was never a prince at all. But the story of Kaspar Hauser didn't end with his death. It only grew. In the years that followed, his case became the subject of hundreds of books, plays, and films. Werner Herzog made a haunting film about him, The Enigma of Kaspar Hauser, which won the Grand Prix at Cannes. Peter Handke wrote a play. Paul Verlaine wrote poems. The band Kasabian took their name from one of his aliases. Societies of Kaspar Hauser believers formed across Germany. People who insisted he was the lost prince despite all evidence. They held conferences. They published journals. They argued that the DNA tests were contaminated. Why did this one case capture the imagination of the world so completely? Because Kaspar Hauser is not just a story about one boy. He is a story about every forgotten child, every person who was never given a name, never given a family, never given a chance. His face stares out at us across 2 centuries, and we still don't know who he really was. But that leaves us with a harder question. If he wasn't royalty, who was he? And why was he locked in a cell for 16 years? Why did someone try to kill him twice? Why did Lord Stanhope abandon him? Why did Feuerbach die so suddenly? And who was the man in the park with the knife? The DNA evidence is clear. Kaspar Hauser was not the son of the Grand Duke of Baden. But that doesn't mean he was a fraud. The physical evidence, the malformed liver, the incomplete brain development, the inability to walk or speak, suggests he really was isolated. For a very long time. Someone locked that boy in a hole in the ground for 16 years. Someone released him. Someone stabbed him. And someone got away with it. His tombstone reads, his birth was unknown, his death hidden. And despite everything we've learned, in nearly 200 years of asking, that is still the truth. In 2024, we learned that Kaspar Hauser was not a prince. We learned that the story of the kidnapped heir, the one that had fascinated the world for 2 centuries, was a myth. But myths aren't the same as lies. Because the real story, the one that science can't answer, is about a boy who spent his entire childhood in a room smaller than a horse stall, who emerged into the world unable to speak, unable to walk, unable to understand what the sun was, who learned to read and write in months, who drew beautiful pictures, who played the piano, who insisted, even on his deathbed, that he had told no lies. Whether Kaspar Hauser was a prince or a pauper, he was a human being, and he deserved better.